I secretly entered my wife and me into a $20,000 couples competition without telling her. We're in second place now, and if we win, it could change our entire lives forever. You might think I'm crazy for doing something this big behind her back, but let me tell you why this matters so much. My name is Brooklyn, I'm 29 years old, and my wife Hayden is 26. We've been through more hardship together than most couples face in a lifetime, and this competition might be our only shot at the kind of stability we've only dreamed about. Let me take you back to how Hayden and I first met, because understanding our journey is the only way you'll truly get why I had to do this. It was 3 years ago at a community college in Portland, Oregon. I was taking evening classes while working 2 part-time jobs, trying to scrape together enough credits for my degree. Hayden was in my American literature class, always sitting in the 3rd row, always asking the most thoughtful questions that made our professor's eyes light up. I remember the exact moment I knew I was falling for her. We were discussing The Great Gatsby, and everyone else was focused on the obvious themes of wealth and status. But Hayden raised her hand and said, "What if the green light isn't about wanting what we can't have, but about holding on to hope when everything else feels impossible?" The way she said it, with this quiet intensity in her voice, made me realize she wasn't just talking about literature. She was talking about life. After class, I worked up the courage to approach her. "That was a beautiful observation about the green light," I told her. She smiled, and I noticed how her eyes crinkled at the corners when she was genuinely happy. "Thanks. I guess I relate to characters who refuse to give up on their dreams, even when the odds are stacked against them." We ended up talking for 2 hours in the campus coffee shop, sharing stories about our backgrounds, our struggles, our hopes for the future. Hayden told me about growing up in a small house on Maple Street in a working-class neighborhood of Salem, Oregon. Her grandmother Celeste had raised her there after her parents died in a car accident when she was just 8 years old. "That little house wasn't much to look at from the outside," she said, "but it was filled with more love and warmth than any mansion could ever hold." Grandmother Celeste taught her to bake bread from scratch, to tend a vegetable garden, and most importantly, to believe that kindness and perseverance could overcome almost any obstacle. Those early days of our relationship felt magical, despite how little money we had. We'd have picnic dates in the park with sandwiches we made at home, study sessions in the library that turned into whispered conversations about our dreams, and long walks through downtown Portland where we'd window shop and imagine our future together. Hayden would point to little houses with front porches and say, "Someday, Brooklyn. Someday we'll have a place that's really ours." The connection between us was immediate and intense. We both understood what it meant to work for everything we had, to go to bed worried about bills, to choose between groceries and gas money. But we also shared this unshakable optimism, this belief that if we just kept working hard and supporting each other, things would eventually get better. When I proposed to her 8 months later with a simple silver band I'd saved up for over 3 months, she cried happy tears and said, "I can't wait to build a real life with you." But life had other plans for us first. The struggles we faced after getting married were more intense than anything either of us had experienced before. It started when the company I worked for downsized and eliminated my position. Then Hayden got sick with pneumonia that turned serious enough to require hospitalization. The medical bills were crushing, and without my income, we couldn't afford our tiny apartment anymore. I'll never forget the night we had to pack our few belongings into my old Honda Civic and admit we had nowhere to go. Hayden sat in the passenger seat, looking so small and fragile, still recovering from being sick. "What are we going to do, Brooklyn?" she asked me, and I could hear the fear in her voice that she was trying so hard to hide. I took her hand and squeezed it tight. "We're going to figure this out together. We always do." For 2 months, we lived in that car, parking in different locations each night to avoid being told to move along. We kept our clothes in the trunk and our toiletries in a small cooler. Hayden would joke that we were having the world's longest camping adventure, but I could see the toll it was taking on both of us. We'd wash up in gas station bathrooms and eat dollar menu items when we could afford them. Some nights, we'd just hold each other in the back seat and make promises about the home we'd have someday. The hardest part wasn't the discomfort or the uncertainty, it was watching the woman I loved lose a little bit of hope each day. Hayden had always been the optimist in our relationship, the one who could find silver linings in the darkest situations. But living in a car while still recovering from illness, applying for jobs from library computers, and never knowing where our next meal would come from started to wear her down in ways that broke my heart. One particularly cold November morning, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Brooklyn, what if we're never going to make it? What if this is just how our life is going to be?" That was the moment I knew I had to do whatever it took to change our circumstances. I couldn't let the most incredible woman I'd ever known lose faith in our future together. Slowly, incredibly slowly, things began to turn around. I found work at a local warehouse, and Hayden got hired part-time at a bookstore. We saved every penny we could and eventually scraped together enough for a security deposit on a studio apartment. It wasn't much, just 400 square feet with thin walls and a temperamental heater, but it was ours. The first night we slept in our own bed instead of the car, Hayden cried with relief. Over the next year, we both worked multiple jobs and took turns going back to school. Our life was still far from easy, but we had stability and hope again. Hayden would often talk about her grandmother's house on Maple Street, especially when she was feeling nostalgic or stressed. She described the way morning sunlight came through the kitchen window, the creaky floorboard in the hallway that Grandmother Celeste could never afford to fix, and the apple tree in the backyard where she used to read books as a child. Last month, everything changed when Hayden got a devastating phone call from her cousin Xavier. Grandmother Celeste had passed away peacefully in her sleep at age 84. Hayden was heartbroken, of course, but the grief was complicated by financial reality. The family needed to sell the house quickly to settle the estate, and they were asking for $8,000, far below market value because the property needed significant repairs and updates. "Brooklyn, I know it's impossible," Hayden told me through tears after the phone call. "8,000 might as well be 80,000 for us right now. But that house, it's the only connection I have left to Grandmother Celeste and my childhood. I just wish there was some way we could keep it in the family." I held her while she cried, making mental calculations of our savings account balance, our monthly expenses, and any possible way we might be able to make this work. Even if we could somehow come up with the $8,000 for the purchase, the house would need new plumbing, electrical work, roof repairs, and countless other improvements before it would be livable. We were talking about at least another $15,000 in renovation costs. That night, after Hayden fell asleep, I sat at our tiny kitchen table with my laptop, desperately searching for solutions. Student loans? We were already buried in debt from school. Personal loans? Our credit wasn't good enough to qualify for the amount we'd need. A second mortgage on our rental apartment? We didn't even own our current place. I must have looked at 50 different websites offering financial assistance, grants, contests, and opportunities. That's when I found it. The Love Conquers All couples competition, sponsored by a group of wedding industry businesses and lifestyle brands. The grand prize was $20,000, plus an additional $5,000 in gift certificates for home improvement stores. $25,000 total, enough to buy Hayden's grandmother's house and handle the essential repairs. I read through the competition rules 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Couples had to submit a video explaining their love story and why they deserved to win the grand prize. The public would vote online, and the couple with the most votes would win. Registration was open for another 2 weeks, with voting taking place over the following month. My hands were shaking as I considered whether I could actually do this. Entering us in the competition without telling Hayden felt like a massive betrayal of trust. We'd always made big decisions together, always been completely honest with each other about everything. But I also knew that if I told her about the competition, she'd talk me out of entering. She'd say we shouldn't get our hopes up, that we'd never win anyway, that there had to be thousands of other couples with better stories and more compelling reasons to deserve the money. But I couldn't stop thinking about the look in her eyes when she talked about losing her grandmother's house forever. I couldn't forget how she described reading under that apple tree as a child, or the way she'd smile when she remembered baking bread with Grandmother Celeste. This house represented more than just a building, it was her connection to the woman who'd raised her, her link to the happiest memories of her childhood, her dream of having a real home where we could build our life together. So I made a decision that could either be the best surprise of Hayden's life or the biggest mistake of mine. I created our entry video during my lunch breaks at work, using footage and photos from our phones. I told the story of how we met, how we'd survived homelessness together, and how much it would mean to give my wife the chance to preserve her grandmother's memory by saving the family home. I kept the video simple and honest. No fancy editing or dramatic music, just me talking directly to the camera about the woman I loved and why she deserved to have her dreams come true. I talked about her strength during our hardest times, her kindness to everyone she met, and her unwavering faith in our future together even when everything seemed hopeless. "My wife Hayden is the strongest, most compassionate person I've ever known," I said in the video. "She held our relationship together when we had nothing but each other. She never lost hope, even when I was ready to give up. Now I have the chance to give her something back, not just a house, but the preservation of her most precious memories and the foundation for the family we want to build together." I submitted our entry on a Friday afternoon, then spent the weekend in a constant state of anxiety and second-guessing. Was I doing the right thing? What if we didn't win and I'd gotten Hayden's hopes up for nothing? What if we did win and she was angry that I'd made such a big decision without consulting her? The competition started with over 3,000 entries, and for the first week, we were buried somewhere in the middle of the pack with just a few dozen votes from friends and family members I'd quietly messaged. I tried to be strategic about it, reaching out to people who knew our story and asking them to share our entry with their networks. I contacted former classmates, coworkers, neighbors, and anyone else I could think of who might be willing to help. Slowly, incredibly slowly, our vote count began to climb. Some of our friends started sharing our story on their social media accounts, and their friends began sharing it too. The video gained a little momentum each day, 50 votes, then 100, then 200. I was checking our standing obsessively, multiple times per day, but trying to act completely normal around Hayden. The hardest part was maintaining the secret while watching her struggle with grief over her grandmother and stress about the house sale. She'd gotten another call from cousin Xavier explaining that the family had received multiple offers and needed to make a decision soon. If we couldn't come up with the money in the next few weeks, the house would be sold to strangers and demolished to make room for a new development. I keep having dreams about that house, Hayden told me one evening as we were making dinner. Last night I dreamed I was 8 years old again, helping grandmother Celeste in the garden. When I woke up, I could almost smell her lavender plants and hear her humming in the kitchen. It's like losing her all over again, knowing that place is going to disappear forever. I wanted so badly to tell her about the competition, to give her hope that maybe we could still save the house. But we were only in the middle of the pack at that point, nowhere near winning position. I couldn't bear the thought of raising her hopes only to disappoint her if we didn't make it to the top. Then something incredible happened. During the third week of voting, a local Portland blogger discovered our entry and wrote a feature story about our journey from homelessness to hope. The article was titled, "Love Against All Odds, Portland Couple Fights to Save Family Home," and it went viral on social media throughout Oregon and Washington. Suddenly, our vote count exploded. We jumped from 15th place to 8th place in a single day. Then to 5th place. Then 3rd. The comments on our entry video were overwhelming, hundreds of people sharing their own stories of hardship and resilience, expressing support for our relationship, and encouraging others to vote for us. By the beginning of the 4th week, we'd climbed all the way to 2nd place, just 800 votes behind the current leaders, a couple from California whose entry video featured professional photography and celebrity endorsements. I could hardly believe what was happening, but I also knew we had a real chance of winning if the momentum continued. The problem was that maintaining the secret was becoming almost impossible. Hayden was getting friend requests and messages from strangers on social media, some of them mentioning our competition entry or asking about our love story video. She was confused and kept asking me if I knew what people were talking about. "Brooklyn, the weirdest thing happened today," she told me after work on a Tuesday. 3 different customers at the bookstore said they'd seen me online somewhere and that they were rooting for us. I have no idea what they meant. "Do you think someone posted a photo of us somewhere?" My heart was pounding as I tried to deflect her questions. "Maybe someone shared one of our old Facebook posts or something?" You know how things spread randomly on social media sometimes. But I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced by my explanation, and I was running out of time to keep the secret. The final week of voting was approaching, and if we won, there would be media attention and publicity that would be impossible to hide. I had to tell her soon, but I wanted to wait until I knew for sure whether we had a real shot at winning. On Thursday of the 4th week, I got the email that changed everything. We had officially moved into 1st place, ahead of the California couple by more than 1,000 votes. The competition would end in 72 hours, and unless something dramatic happened, we were going to win $25,000. I sat in my car in the warehouse parking lot during my lunch break, reading that email over and over again. We were actually going to win. After all the years of struggle, all the nights of uncertainty, all the dreams we'd put on hold because we couldn't afford to pursue them, we were finally going to catch a break. But now came the hardest part. I had to tell Hayden what I'd done, and I had no idea how she was going to react. Would she be thrilled about the possibility of saving her grandmother's house? Or would she be furious that I'd made such a huge decision without consulting her? I decided to wait until Friday evening, when the competition would be officially over and we'd know the final results. If we won, I could present it as a complete surprise, not just that I'd entered us, but that we'd actually succeeded. If we somehow lost at the last minute, I could confess my attempt and we could be disappointed together without her having to go through the stress of the final voting period. Friday was the longest day of my life. I checked our vote count every hour, watching our lead fluctuate as the California couple's supporters mounted a final push. We were ahead by 800 votes at noon, 600 votes at 3 o'clock, 900 votes at 5 o'clock. The margin kept changing, but we maintained first place throughout the entire day. At exactly midnight Pacific time, the voting period ended. I refreshed the page one final time and saw the words I'd been hoping for: winners, Brooklyn and Hayden Thompson, Portland, Oregon. We had won by a margin of over 2,000 votes, with more than 18,000 people ultimately supporting our entry. I barely slept that night, alternating between excitement about the prize money and anxiety about Hayden's reaction to my secret. How do you tell your wife that you've just won $25,000 in a competition she didn't know existed? Saturday morning, I made her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, and asked her to sit down with me at our little kitchen table. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my laptop and navigated to the competition website. Hayden, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me explain the whole story before you react, okay? She looked concerned immediately. Brooklyn, you're scaring me. What's going on? Remember a month ago when you got that call about your grandmother's house, and you said you wished there was some way we could save it? She nodded, looking confused about where this conversation was heading. Well, I've been working on something in secret, and I need to show you what happened. I turned the laptop screen toward her and clicked play on our entry video. I watched her face as she saw footage of our wedding, photos from our homeless period, and clips of me talking about her strength and resilience. Her expression went from confusion to shock to something I couldn't quite read. When the video ended, I explained everything. The competition, the voting process, the blogger's article, the climb from middle of the pack to first place. And finally, the moment she'd been waiting for without knowing it. Hayden, we won. We actually won. $25,000. Enough to buy your grandmother's house and fix it up so we can live there. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me with tears streaming down her face. Then she whispered, Brooklyn, what did you do? I gave us a chance, I told her. I gave us a chance to have the life we've always dreamed about, in the house where you grew up, where you have all those beautiful memories with grandmother Celeste. She was crying harder now, but I still couldn't tell if they were happy tears or upset tears. You did all of this without telling me? For weeks, you kept this secret while I was grieving and worrying about losing the house forever. My heart sank. This wasn't the reaction I'd hoped for. I wanted to surprise you. I wanted to give you hope, but only if it was real hope. If we'd lost, you never would have had to know we tried. Brooklyn, she said, reaching across the table to take my hands, you beautiful, crazy, wonderful woman. Do you realize what you've done? You've given me my childhood back. You've given us a real home. You've made it possible for me to walk through that house again, to sleep in my old bedroom, to sit under the apple tree where grandmother Celeste used to read to me. Relief flooded through me as I realized she wasn't angry, she was overwhelmed with gratitude and disbelief. So you're not mad that I kept it secret? I'm mad that you went through all that stress alone, she said, laughing through her tears. But I'm also incredibly proud of you for fighting for us, for our future, for my family's memory. No one has ever done anything like this for me before. We spent the rest of the morning making phone calls. First to cousin Xavier, who was shocked and delighted that we could actually purchase the house. Then to a local contractor who could give us estimates for the renovation work. Then to both of our employers, because we'd need to take time off to handle the legal paperwork and begin planning our move. The prize money would be transferred within 2 weeks, and the house sale could be finalized shortly after that. For the first time in years, we were making plans that felt real and achievable rather than like distant dreams. But the most incredible part came that afternoon, when we drove out to Salem to see the house together. Hayden had a key from when she'd been helping clean out her grandmother's belongings, and she wanted to walk through the rooms one more time before they officially became ours. As we pulled up to the small blue house on Maple Street, I could see the emotions washing over Hayden's face. The paint was peeling, the front porch sagged slightly, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. But to her, it was perfect. This is it, Brooklyn. This is where I learned to ride a bike, where I carved my initials in that fence post, where grandmother Celeste taught me that home isn't about how much money you have, it's about how much love you put into a place. We spent 2 hours walking through every room, with Hayden sharing memories and pointing out all the improvements we'd be able to make. The kitchen where grandmother Celeste had taught her to bake. The living room where they'd watched old movies together on Sunday afternoons. The bedroom that had been hers as a child, where she'd dreamed about her future and never imagined it would include sleeping in a car or wondering where her next meal would come from. Standing in the backyard under that old apple tree, Hayden turned to me with the biggest smile I'd seen from her in months. Brooklyn, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you found a way to save this place when I'd already given up hope. I did it because you never gave up on us, I told her. When we were living in the car, when everything seemed impossible, you kept believing we'd find our way to something better. Now we're here, and we're going to build an incredible life in this house. The prize money arrived exactly 2 weeks later, and we closed on the house the following Friday. We've been living here for 3 months now, and every day feels like a gift. We've repaired the roof, updated the electrical system, and restored the kitchen to working order. The house is slowly becoming not just a preservation of Hayden's childhood memories, but the foundation for our own family's future. Sometimes in the evening, we sit under the apple tree and talk about everything we've been through to get here. The competition votes, the months of secret planning, the years of financial struggle that led us to this point. Hayden often says she still can't believe I managed to keep such a huge secret for so long, especially when the outcome was so uncertain. What if we hadn't won, she asked me last week. What if all that effort and hope had been for nothing? Then we would have kept working and saving and looking for other opportunities, I told her. But we did win, because sometimes when you love someone enough to take a leap of faith, the universe finds a way to catch you. Looking back, I know that entering that competition without telling Hayden was a risk. It could have damaged her trust in me if things had gone differently. But it was also the most important gamble I've ever taken, because it gave us the chance to turn our dreams into reality. Now, when people ask me about the key to a strong relationship, I tell them it's about being willing to fight for each other's happiness, even when the odds seem impossible. Sometimes that means holding someone's hand through the hardest times. Sometimes it means keeping a secret that might change both of your lives forever. For Hayden and me, it meant believing that love really can conquer all, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you're willing to do whatever it takes to build the future you both deserve. And here in this little house on Maple Street, surrounded by the memories of the woman who raised the love of my life, I know we made the right choice. Every morning when I wake up next to my wife in the bedroom where she once dreamed of her future, I'm reminded that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most beautiful rewards. We went from homeless to hopeful to homeowners, and it all started with a secret entry in a competition I wasn't even sure we could win. But we did win, and more importantly, we won together. And that makes every sleepless night of secret planning, every anxious day of vote checking, and every moment of uncertainty completely worth it. This is our home now, filled with love and possibility and the knowledge that when you refuse to give up on your dreams, sometimes they actually do come true.